Hi, my name is Craig. Welcome to this episode of the Great Outdoor Bible Adventure. So Iran got trounced. Their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, rendered useless to them. Their allies, Russia and China, refused to come into their aid. Who is Iran? Does it have any Bible history? I'll tell you one thing about it. Iran will be back and will be anti-Israel. How do you know that, Craig? Are you a prophet? No, not. What, did you have an encounter with God? Did he give you some new revelations, some hidden truths to bring forth? No, not in the least. I read it. It's right here in the Word. Let's get into it. All right, in this video, we're going to look at Iran. Who are they? Do they have any history in the Bible? Who were they? Who are they? And who will they be? But before we do that, I want to read a couple verses out of Romans chapter 9, verse 17 and verse 22 and 23. This is about Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And then we're going to apply this principle to Iran later on in the video. Here we go. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. And then down in verse 22, what if God, choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the object of his wrath, prepared for destruction? What if he did this to make the riches of his glory known to the objects of his mercy, which he prepared in advance for his glory? All right, one thing, you read this verse, don't think that Pharaoh, you know what happened to Pharaoh. He enslaved the Jews, 10 plagues came upon him, and he had to let Israel go. And these verses said, Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose. But don't think that Pharaoh was just a puppet in God's hands. What God enabled Pharaoh to do was the very thing Pharaoh wanted to do. Now let's get into Iran. Who were they in the Bible? The first time we see Iran prominently mentioned in the Bible is in Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to read verse 1 and verse 17 and 18. Here's the situation. This was almost 200 years before this happened. But Israel had been taken captive by the Babylonians and deported to the land of the Babylonians, and God was going to raise up the nation of the Persians, the Medes and the Persians actually, to defeat Babylon and to set Israel free. Let's read it. A tremendous prophecy. Isaiah 13 and verse 1. An oracle concerning Babylon. And then in verse 17, see, I will stir up against them the Medes, against Babylon that is. And then verse 18, their bows will strike down their young men. In other words, the Medes and the Persians were going to defeat the Babylonians. Later on, Isaiah prophesied the very name of the king that would lead this defeat of Babylon, the king of the Medes and the Persians. In Isaiah chapter 44 and verse 28, it says, who says of Cyrus, there's his name, he is my shepherd and will accomplish all that I please. He will say of Jerusalem, get this, Jerusalem had been destroyed by the Babylonians. The temple was destroyed. He will say of Jerusalem, let it be rebuilt. And of the temple, let its foundations be laid. Cyrus would do all this. And this was fulfilled in 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 22 and 23, where Cyrus makes this decree. All the while, Cyrus, the king of the Medes and the Persians, present-day Iran, is not a believer. In Isaiah chapter 44, verse 4 and 5, verse 4, though you do not acknowledge me, speaking of Cyrus. In verse 5, it echoes the same thing as if to underscore the point. Though you have not acknowledged me, Cyrus was not a believer, and yet he was used by God, the Medes and the Persians, to be a tremendous blessing to Israel. This is modern day Iran. The next major reference we have to the Medes and the Persians occurred during Daniel's time, about 150 years or so, 160 after Isaiah. Daniel served in the court of the Babylonians and in the court of the Medes and the Persians. And Daniel saw this prophetically, that the Persians were coming, in Daniel chapter 7 and verse 5, where he saw a vision of a bear. And it says this, and there before me was a second beast that looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. This is the Medes and the Persians. The bear was raised up on one side. Initially, the Medes were the more powerful of the two groups, and it appears that maybe the Persians became power. But this nation of the Medes and the Persians, it's almost like an enigma. It blesses Israel, prophesied by Isaiah, but does not acknowledge God, and yet it can be predatory and dangerous, like a predatory bear. This also is foreseen, prophesied by Daniel in Daniel 2 and verse 32, and Daniel 8 verses 1 through 4, all about the Medes and the Persians. But perhaps the greatest, most impactful prophecy, well, I guess they all are, occurred in the book of Esther. In the book of Esther, the Jews were under the rule of the Medes and the Persians. Esther had become the wife, the queen of King Xerxes. But there was a man in the court, in the Persian court, named Haman, who sought to destroy the Jews, all of the Jews. You might call him a modern Adolf Hitler. Let's read about it in Esther chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people dispersed and scattered among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom, whose customs are different from those of all other people, and who do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it please the king, let an issue be decreed to destroy them. So there you go, folks. There's some of the major references to Iran, the Medes and the Persians, in the Bible. Incidentally, modern-day Iran is about, and I've heard different things, anywhere from 50 to 61% Persian, and about 11% Kurds. Now, part of the lineage of the Kurds goes, the ancestry of the Kurds are the Medes. So they're still there. But as you can see, Persia could be a great blessing to Israel under Cyrus, even though they're non-believers. They can be predatory like a bear. They can be of great danger to the Jews under Haman. And yet of note, Haman was overthrown by the king of Persia. So great blessings. And that brings us to Iran today. Let's go back to our Romans passage. Now we've seen Iran in the Bible. Now let's go to Iran today. I wonder what the Lord is doing there. We're going back to our scriptures in Romans 9. Let me read them to you. It's about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, an arch enemy of Israel that God allowed to prosper, even helped to prosper, and then knocked him down. Let's read it. Verse 17, for the scripture says to Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all of the earth. And then in verse 22, what if God, choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the object of his wrath, prepared for destruction? What if he did this to make the riches of his glory known to the objects of his mercy, whom he prepared in advance for glory? I wonder if this is what God did with modern-day Iran right before our eyes. They've hated the Jews ever since the Iranian Revolution under the Ayatollah. Did God sort of unleash them? Actually help them to gain power and strength? Let them manifest the hatred of their heart, only to knock them down, to show Israel his glory. But not only Israel, the Iranian people. Do you know that the fastest growing church, one of the fastest in the world, is in Iran? I'm not talking about an individual church. I mean the national church. It is growing. Did God humiliate the Ayatollah and his regime to show Israel his glory, that he is the true God, and also have mercy upon the Iranian Christians who are having a tough time of it? These questions I can't answer definitively, but that scripture in Romans 9 has my attention. Now let's go to Iran in the future. They will be back. All right, Iran in the future. I've said they will be back, and they will be just as anti-Israel as ever before, and anti-Christian. I believe there is a harvest of souls in Iran for the cause of Christ, just like in many other countries. But why do I say this, that they're coming back? Ezekiel 38, verses 1 through 6, talks about the kingdom, really, of the Antichrist. There could be battles in Ezekiel 38 that precede the Antichrist, but I believe that chapter culminates in the battle of Armageddon. And in verse 5, who do they list as being there? Persia. Persia. In the confederacy of the Antichrist. I don't know when this is going to be. I have no idea. I don't know whether they're going to be nuclear. I have no idea. The Bible doesn't say. It does not appear that at this point with the Antichrist that Iran will be leading the charge. They will be one of the support nations, but not the leader. That's why I say that Iran will be back. No hidden revelation, just reading the Bible. I suggest you do it. It'll cue you in on what's going on in the world today. Well, this concludes this episode of the Great Outdoor Bible Adventure. You have a great day. You can see it's sort of cloudy out, thunderstorms and everything. Welcome to Pennsylvania. God bless you. Have a great day.